President Trump says he has authorized the deployment of 2 U.S. nuclear submarines to strategic locations in response to recent threats made by former Russian President Dmitri Medvedev. The two leaders have been exchanging sharp rhetoric after the White House gave Moscow a 10-day ultimatum to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine or face stringent new sanctions. In response, Mr. Medvedev warned that Russia maintained powerful nuclear capabilities. The exact positioning of the submarines remains undisclosed. We'll hear from Moscow shortly with Steve Rosenberg. But first, O Donahue begins our coverage from Washington.
In recent days, Donald Trump has taken a noticeably tougher tone on Russia. Russia, I think what they're doing is disgraceful, he said earlier this week. But his rhetoric has now been matched by military action, specifically the deployment of 2 U.S. nuclear submarines. He did not specify whether these vessels are equipped with nuclear warheads. The move was in response to remarks by Dmitri Medvidev, who accused President Trump of engaging in a dangerous game of ultimatums, referencing the threatened sanctions should Russia fail to agree to a ceasefire deal in Ukraine. Medvedev suggested such ultimatums are not merely diplomatic threats, but escalatory steps toward a broader conflict, not just with Ukraine, but potentially with the United States itself. Writing on Truth Social, President Trump defended his decision. I've ordered this deployment in case these reckless statements are more than just empty words. Language matters, and sometimes words can trigger consequences no one intended. I hope this isn't one of those cases. Trump and Medvedev previously met in 2017 at a summit in Asia. At the time, Medvedev described Trump as open and well-intentioned. Though he still holds a senior role on Russia's National Security Council, Medvedev is not considered a direct spokesperson for President Putin, but he remains a controversial voice in Russian politics. Today, Vladimir Putin, pictured alongside his Belarusian counterpart, took a more restrained tone, stating that disappointments usually stem from unrealistic expectations. The U.S. operates more than a dozen submarines capable of carrying nuclear weapons, part of the strategic triad that includes land and air-based systems. These subs are the stealthiest element of America's nuclear deterrence. Trump's ceasefire deadline expires at the end of next week. He has already said he doesn't believe sanctions will alter Putin's behavior. We'll return to Steve Rosenberg in Moscow shortly, but first, back to you in Washington.
Thanks, Clive. Yes, this move is quite remarkable. It remains unclear whether the deployed submarines are nuclear-armed or simply nuclear-powered. We also don't know their destination. Interestingly, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor seemed to downplay Medvedev's significance yesterday, dismissing him as a non-decision maker in Russia. And yet, here we are, seeing military assets mobilized in response to his comments. The president emphasized today that he considered Medvedev's language to be a direct threat, and in his words, he had no choice but to act to protect the American people. It's certainly a marked escalation, but whether it leads to actual confrontation remains uncertain. Next week's deadline could be pivotal, especially regarding the potential for new sanctions, not just on Russia, but also on key partners like China and India.